4 years, one of South Africa's most powerful political figures has carefully managed his public image as a reformer, a stabilizer, and a defender of constitutional democracy. But now, a senior political rival has stepped forward with claims that could reshape the national conversation and potentially open the door to legal scrutiny at the highest level of government. At the center of this political storm are Helen Zille, senior leader within the Democratic Alliance, and President Cyril Ramaphosa. What began as sharp political criticism has evolved into something far more serious. According to statements made in recent public forums and media engagements, Zille has suggested that critical information surrounding executive decisions and past controversies may not have been fully transparent to the South African public. While no formal charges have been announced, reports suggest that her remarks have intensified scrutiny around the president's previous explanations on sensitive matters. This is not just another political clash. It unfolds at a time when public trust in institutions remains fragile, economic pressures weigh heavily on households, and voters are increasingly demanding accountability from all sides of the political spectrum. The tension escalated after renewed debate over past controversies involving presidential disclosures and executive decision-making. Zille, known for her direct and uncompromising style, reportedly questioned whether the full truth had been presented to Parliament and the public regarding specific internal matters within the presidency. Although she stopped short of making definitive legal accusations, her language suggested that inconsistencies, if proven, could raise constitutional questions. According to political analysts, such claims, if substantiated, could potentially trigger further parliamentary inquiry or even judicial review. Supporters of Ramaphosa maintain that he has consistently acted within the law and that previous investigations into related matters have not resulted in criminal findings against him. They argue that political opponents are reviving old narratives ahead of critical electoral periods. However, critics counter that unanswered questions still linger and that accountability mechanisms must be applied equally, regardless of office. South Africa's democracy is built on constitutional oversight, separation of powers, and institutional integrity. When high-ranking political figures openly challenge the credibility of a sitting president, the implications extend beyond party rivalry. Zille's comments have reportedly sparked renewed discussion within opposition benches in Parliament. Some lawmakers have indicated that if new evidence were to emerge, procedural steps could include formal motions, committee reviews, or calls for independent examination. Legal experts note that for any matter to proceed to court, clear evidence of wrongdoing would be required. Allegations alone do not meet the threshold for prosecution. Yet history has shown that political controversies, once ignited, can evolve rapidly depending on investigative outcomes. Reaction across South Africa has been sharply divided. Within the African National Congress, senior figures have dismissed the claims as politically motivated. Party representatives have emphasized that Ramaphosa has faced extensive scrutiny before and has cooperated with institutional processes. Meanwhile, members of the Democratic Alliance have framed Zille's remarks as a defense of transparency and constitutional accountability. They argue that the public deserves clarity on matters involving the presidency, especially where governance and ethical standards are concerned. Civil society organizations have taken a more measured approach. Several groups have reiterated the importance of allowing due process to unfold without trial by media. Analysts warn that inflammatory rhetoric could destabilize public confidence if not grounded in verifiable facts. At this stage, there has been no official announcement of new legal proceedings. However, parliamentary observers suggest that oversight committees could revisit certain documents or request further clarification if political pressure intensifies. South Africa's judiciary has historically demonstrated independence in politically sensitive cases. Any potential legal pathway would require substantiated claims, formal complaints, and evidentiary review before reaching a courtroom. The broader issue, experts say, is not merely whether a case proceeds, but how institutions respond to allegations involving the executive branch. Timing is critical. South Africa stands at a politically delicate moment, with coalition politics reshaping traditional power balances and voter frustration growing over economic challenges, energy reliability, and governance concerns. For Zille and the Democratic Alliance, raising questions about presidential transparency reinforces their long-standing campaign themes around accountability. For Ramaphosa and the ANC, maintaining stability and projecting leadership continuity remain central priorities. Whether this confrontation results in formal action or fades as another chapter in South Africa's vibrant political debate may depend on what evidence, if any, emerges in the coming weeks. If new documentation or testimony were to surface supporting claims of deliberate misrepresentation, constitutional mechanisms could be triggered. These range from parliamentary motions to judicial proceedings. However, absent concrete findings, the issue may remain confined to political discourse rather than legal consequence. Political analysts caution against premature conclusions. South Africa has witnessed numerous high-profile controversies that generated intense headlines but ultimately relied on institutional processes to determine outcomes. The key question is whether this moment marks a turning point, or simply another high-stakes exchange in a competitive democratic environment. Beyond personalities, this episode underscores a deeper tension within South African politics, the struggle between narrative and proof, allegation and adjudication, perception and procedure. In a nation shaped by a constitutional commitment to accountability, the threshold for legal action remains clear: evidence, due process, and judicial determination. Until that threshold is met, the claims remain part of an unfolding political narrative rather than a concluded legal finding. But the fact that such questions are being raised at the highest level speaks volumes about the intensity of the current political climate. As the country watches closely, one reality stands firm: in South Africa's democracy, no leader is above scrutiny, and no allegation, however dramatic, becomes fact without proof. Whether this controversy reshapes the presidency or becomes a footnote in a broader political rivalry will depend not on rhetoric, but on what the evidence ultimately reveals. And in the days ahead, the institutions of the Republic may once again be called upon to demonstrate their strength.